Welcome to the Wolverine Digest podcast, the best spot for objective and authentic coverage of Michigan athletics. If you want open dialogue, honest opinions, and in-depth coverage of the maize and blue, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's your host, Brandon Brown, joined as always by Chris Breiler.
I was going to start by saying go blue.
And I'll fade us out right there, and we'll kick it off. Switching the mic here just a second. Should be good. All right, Wednesday night. What do you think the turnout's going to be tonight, Chris? We've had this talk. We had this talk last year. We're having this talk a little bit this year. Bored seems like too strong of a word, but you and I have always said that it's pretty palpable when there's like a buzz, when there's something like really, really grabbing a hold of the fan base. And it's almost like Michigan is just too good that it's not even allowed to happen right now. We got 50 people in here climbing. It'll climb. I mean, by the time we finish the show up on Monday, I think we had close to 200 or maybe over 200, but
before we get to football, I see Matt Kirby right out of the gate saying right on time, fellas, as in plural. Do you want to give the people a insight into the delay here?
I mean, if it ain't one thing, it's something else. You know, I mean, this is 7:05, 7:10.
Had nothing to do with the delay. Okay, I can't keep taking L's over here. Brandon had a personal issue he had to attend to. I was ready to go, ready to fire up on time, and
sometimes when nature calls, you gotta listen. You gotta listen.
Better before the show than on a live show where there's no preparation.
That was the decision that we made. I could have done the classic that Chris loves,
which has become just a terrible habit this season. Brandon tried to justify it. I'm like, there's been at least 2 shows here where you've just gotten up and disappeared to go to the bathroom.
We said this before. If it had happened tonight, it would have been 3 times out of 201 shows. I don't quite think that's a habit, but look, I'll take it. So, I was down here I was on the radio with Jamie at 4:30. Half an hour appearance with them, stayed sitting down here, computers sitting here, get ready to fire it up at 7. Got to go to the bathroom. It happens. It was pretty cooperative. I mean, I wasn't gone that long. It was already after 7 when that started because we were bullshitting like we usually do, and it's fine. We're good. I booth bladder. I'm not sure I know what that means, but
you know what, Chad? Yes, a booth bladder. I think a booth bladder just signifies it's kind of like when you're a child and you're used to going all of the time whenever you want. Like down on the field, I can't just up and go. I gotta learn, I gotta prepare, I gotta hold it. So you build up a tolerance, and I think living a life of convenience, just when it hits you, there's no stopping it.
Yeah, I think I go to the bathroom one time during a game, maybe. One time. I don't think that's excessive at all. Sometimes maybe not at all. I don't know. I'm much more focused on diesel and food and diesel. Much more focused on those things than the bathroom when I'm up there. So anyway, I don't know. I did 2 seasons on the sidelines. It can be done. You're not intaking as much though either on the sidelines. There's not.
I'm not intaking anything.
The systems slow down a little bit down there.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, shit, 5 minutes in talking about that. Let's go ahead and shift it a little bit. So actually, I see a couple people talking about this since it is a Wednesday. We're waiting for questions to start rolling in. We'll be here for as long as we need to be here. But let's talk about it right now, Chris. Saturday's forecast, not awesome for you. Are you already planning, dreading? What's the move for like a 90% rain, 50s kind of day?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you prepare for it, it's fine. As a photographer, I think it's just like when it snows out. It kind of adds an element to what you're able to capture. So I'm excited for that. Obviously, I wouldn't. The last game that I shot was over 100 degrees down on the field in Nebraska, and I'm going to go from that to probably high 40s and rain on Saturday. But yeah, I mean, just Tony Petrosky, he's a photographer out there as well. If you dress for it, you prepare for it, it'll be just fine. I think Michigan fans are cut. Hey, this is fall football in the state of Michigan, and so I'm ready for it. I'm looking forward to it. And within the forecast, I put it out on the Facebook page not too long ago, but I'm gonna have a partial solar eclipse.
Wow.
On Saturday afternoon. Like the sun is going to be like 50% covered, and so I'm really, I know it's already going to be cloudy, but it feels like you lose 50% of the sun. Like, wondering how dark it's going to get tomorrow afternoon. Gonna for sure have to have the lights on, I'm assuming, but it's going to be interesting, man. I'd like to. It would be kind of. I don't know how many games have been played at Michigan Stadium under an eclipse. That's a pretty incredible thing. So it'd be nice to be able to see it.
That's pretty sweet. Well, there's Chris's game plan for Saturday. What about the game itself? I mean, do we think this will have much effect? I mean, Michigan has been throwing it a little bit more. JJ McCarthy been super sharp, and but I mean, they still want to run the ball, and that kind of speaks towards what they're going to do and what they want to do anyway. I just wonder, this is the kind of thing in a game that Michigan's going to be favored by a ton. I think they're favored by like 30 or something, aren't they, over Indiana? It's a lot, dude. It's more than any of the other games. But these are the, every once in a while you'll get something weird. The weather, I don't think Indiana's got a shot no matter where they play or what's going on. But will this, change it a little bit?
Well, here's what I'll say. If the weather is not good, and Trent, one of our contributors today, put out an article. Apparently, Indiana has the 115th ranked rush offense in the country, and so if it turns into a ground game against that Michigan defense, I think we're going to see more and then some from what we've seen from Michigan over the last 2 weeks against Indiana. I think they're going to be back home. I think the Hoosiers are completely overmatched in this one. It's not a big deal, but you've also got guys like Jack Tuttle and A.J. Barner who have the opportunity to go against their former team. They played for the Hoosiers last year. So I just, to me, everything about this game, crappy weather, Michigan dominates in the trenches, and Indiana just not built for that right now. I think it's going to be Matt Kirby, exactly. Like you put Khalil Mullings in the back and you just hammer it away with him all afternoon. I mean, that's the kind of game this is going to be. I think Chad Zolman, another game like that. You empty the bench and you probably see every Wolverine who's dressed, with maybe the exception of long snapper Greg Tarr, get in the game and get a rep or two.
Dude, 33.5 point favorites over the Hoosiers, man.
Yeah, they're not good.
Wow, that's more than any of those non-conference games.
Yeah,
that is, I mean, I do think a lot of that has to do with how Michigan's looked the last 2 weeks. I mean, Indiana's not going to. You wouldn't expect them to put up any more of a fight than Minnesota or Nebraska in their own house. Can't expect Indiana to do much better in Ann Arbor, but that is a monstrous number for a conference game. Like, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a spread that big anywhere else in the country with two conference teams. But there you have it, 33.5 for the Wolverines over Indiana.
Coming off of a bye week, so they're trying to get reacclimated as well. Lost to Ohio State to open the season, lost to Louisville, got their asses kicked by Maryland, and went to. Now that I'm looking at their schedule, I guess I must have missed this game, but it was 4 overtimes against Akron to notch out a 29-27 win. So that gives you a perfect example of kind of where this Indiana football team is at. Michigan's just operating at a different level. They're playing efficient. They're playing mistake-free. I think the elements will test that a little bit tomorrow. That Michigan has been praised with, they're not turning the ball over. They're committing the fewest penalties in the country, the least penalized team. Michigan has only had one penalty over the last 2 games.
I know.
One penalty. That's crazy to me. So maybe the elements will test that a little bit because, we look at the schedule, and you talked about it a little bit earlier in the show. We're looking for Michigan to be tested, and when is it going to happen? Well, I don't think it's necessarily going to come from Indiana, but the elements and playing in the rain, and if the weather looks the way we all think it's going to look, that might present a unique challenge that Michigan has to face a little bit of adversity.
Just some perspective. Number 1 Georgia taking on Vanderbilt, the Indiana of the SEC. 31.5 point favorites. So, I mean, this is a massive number. Granted, Georgia is going to Vandy, but still, I don't think I would have even picked a number like that for a conference game. I know Indiana's not good. I know they're not going to test Michigan any more than the last two opponents, but that's as big as it gets right there. All right, this is a pretty good question. I mean, there's probably only maybe three playing a lot at this point, but you just kind of think in our head for a second as we go over this question from Connor S. Thank you. Who are the top three? I assume you mean just for Michigan. Who are the top three transfers
It's easy
so
for
far?
me right now. Easy for me.
There's
Drake Nugent, AJ Barner, Josiah Stewart. Stewart, by the way, who got off to a relatively quiet start, now leading the team in sacks going into week 7. And so, you have a defensive end who transfers in from Coastal Carolina, leading the team in sacks. You've got AJ Barner, a tight end, who's leading all tight ends in snaps, I believe, at this point, is doing a hell of a job blocking. And then you've got Drake Nugent, who started every game at center, filling in for Olu Oluwatimi, who was one of the best centers that Michigan's ever had, and doing a hell of a job filling in there. And so I think there's 3 transfers right there that have been incredible for Michigan this year.
Yeah, I didn't even know that Josiah Stewart was leading the team, so I probably would have said Josh Wallace just off the top of my dome.
I think he had one going into last. They've all happened like within the last few weeks. I believe.
Yeah, he had 2.5, I think, in one game maybe or something like that. So, but
Nebraska.
Josh Wallace has locked down the cornerback spot opposite Will Johnson. I mean, he hasn't made any big plays or anything, but that was the biggest question mark coming into the season, and it's not one anymore. So my mind went there first, but then hearing you mention Josiah Stewart, who's leading the team in sacks, I'm like, yeah, it's kind of hard to argue that. And then just throw Ernest Hausman in there, who's been the leading tackler at least twice, I think, and Jim Harbaugh has done a phenomenal job. I think the two no-brainers right out of the gate, Drake Nugent, holding down the center spot, and AJ Barner, who has been playing a ton. I mean, I don't know. What did you think? We saw him a little bit during the spring game, but what did you think AJ Barner's role would be? Do you think he would be playing this much? I mean, outplaying Colston Loveland every single game so far.
No, I thought for sure that Colston Loveland would be getting a bulk of the snaps and that we would see more production out of him. But when I went back and watched some of the film on AJ Barner right after Michigan snagged him out of the portal, and then saw him in person during the spring game, I'm like, this dude looks legit. Like he looks every bit the part of a big time, Big Ten tight end. So not surprised that he's been as effective as he is. I think the bigger surprise has been maybe what type of impact that's had on Colston Loveland's production so far.
Yeah, and when you look at the breakdown of the plays, it's explained. I mean, AJ Barner's in there on the running plays. Colston Loveland's more in there on the passing plays, and Michigan tends to run it a little bit more. So that's just kind of the way it's played out. It's not, and Grant Newsome talked about it. This hopefully will keep Colston Loveland healthy, and he'll be fresh, and he won't be wore down like Luke Schoonmaker was apparently last year at the end of the season. So yeah, it's working. I mean, like I said, I've pointed it out a few times on the show. I'm not like distraught over it, but I never would have guessed it. I never would have guessed that AJ Barner would have more snaps than Colston Loveland. It's just kind of an interesting development based on the way that they've chosen to play. So, man, Jim Harbaugh does do a phenomenal job with the transfer portal. Hopefully he continues to do that. I was just confirming that real quick. Andrell Anthony, I don't know if you saw that, Chris, season-ending injury. Yeah, that's a bummer for him. He was having a good year.
Having a good year. I mean, he was putting up big-time numbers out there in Oklahoma, and, it's hard to follow these guys once they transfer out because we're so focused on Michigan, but you do want to see these guys go elsewhere and succeed, and he was having a hell of a year out there, and kind of a bummer.
He was Oklahoma's leading receiver with 27 catches for 429 yards and a touchdown. Yeah. And he had 5 catches for 42 yards in that game before he got hurt. And he's, he apparently tore up his knee. So done for the year. That blows.
I don't know if that one counts, CJ. That was brought up by the fans. So I don't know if that necessarily counts here. You're bending the rules a little bit there. We do have a super chat I saw come through.
Okay. Haven't gotten down to it yet. I'm still at the 720 mark. We'll get there. We will get there. This is an interesting question, I guess, and we've talked about some of this, and some of the players and coaches have also talked about this. Actually, Jim Harbaugh spent a lot of time talking about this earlier. Was it last week or after the game, maybe? Whenever. But the question is it a concern or just a bummer? that Michigan has not had any long touchdown runs yet this season. And Jim Harbaugh said, like, last year wasn't the norm. Like, there were a lot of them, but that just doesn't happen in football. So I feel like maybe Water's kind of finding its level a little bit. It doesn't feel – the running game feels better now than it did 2 or 3 weeks into the season. Blake Corm's getting his. J.J. McCarthy had a couple rushing touchdowns, Kalel Mullings. So I'm not concerned. I don't think – I wouldn't use that word. I think it is – kind of a bummer because we got so used to Donovan running off a big one or Blake breaking off a big one, and we just haven't really seen it as much this year.
Yeah, actually, in some weird way, I would almost I don't know if this is the right way to put it.
I
would
know where
almost
you're going.
More concerned if a lot of what was happening with Michigan was big explosive plays, because like Brandon said, you do expect Water to find its level at some point, and that's just not what Michigan has been this year. It has been, and we've talked about it a number of times on the podcast, but it's not flashy. It's not explosive. It's a slow burn, chip away, play by play, possession by possession, quarter by quarter, until, the final score is just a flat out dominant performance start to finish. And so I like what they're doing this year. It took me a long time to come around. Yeah, Tyrone, I completely agree. It took me a long time to come around to this style of football, because you turn on games around the country and you watch teams like USC play and Oregon play, or, even what Colorado was doing earlier in the year, where you've got the quarterback putting up, 400 yards in a game, and you're like, damn, I would love to see that in Ann Arbor. But time and time again, Michigan's brand of football just continues to work and gets them where they want to be, particularly over the last 2 years. So yeah, I don't find it a bummer at all. I feel more confident about what this Michigan team does offensively this year than I felt in the previous 2 years. And they've had a pretty good, solid 2021 and solid 22. So I think it's going to even lead to bigger and better things in 23.
Yeah, I mean, I know Blake had he's had a 54-yard run. He didn't score on it. I think he had another pretty long one over 40 or 50 yards. So it's not like they've been completely absent. Kalel Mullings, I think his touchdown run was like 21 or 24 or something. JJ's had some nice scrambles and some nice keeps. So it's not dead, but yeah, I think it is just kind of getting back to normal a little bit. The 50, 60, 70-yard touchdown runs that we saw last year, that just doesn't happen very often. Jim Harbaugh was pretty quick to point that out. All right. Angelucci, that's got to be Italian, right? Got to be. I was wrong about the other one, but Nick maybe can point. Nicky Angelucci. Anyway, most impressive stat on defense so far. There's quite a few of them, but can't believe no one has taken a snap inside the 10 yet. That's wild. Michigan's winning 76-0 in third quarters. That's insane. I do this defense, man. Like, there's so many good guys that there's not like a guy. We talked about that. Last year they called it the no-star defense. This year they're leaning towards the we fence, which sounds kind of funny to say for some reason. But it's been incredible to watch these guys, man. All three levels working together, finally kind of getting back to healthy. And yeah, some of those stats, you see sometimes stats are like skewed, or it's like, they didn't such and such defense hasn't given up a snap inside the 10, but they've also given up 8 touchdowns of more than 30 yards. So that's why nobody's ever in there. That's not what this is. This is just flat out dominance. There's no skewing. There's no cherry picking. It's just, they've been that good.
Yeah, it's hard to narrow it in on just one, because I think there's so many impressive. 17 of 24 quarters have been scoreless for the opposing offense. Nobody's taken a snap inside the 10. I mean, the penalties, they're not, they're just so disciplined in every facet of the game, offensively and defensively, that it's really hard to narrow in on just one thing. And I think even that question, Nick, like that, trying to answer that is difficult. And I think it speaks to how good and how balanced this team is, because everything they're doing is impressive. Everything they're doing is balanced, whether it's offensively or defensively. And I don't know. It didn't feel like it was like this last year, and it didn't feel like it was like this in 2021. Like, they just kind of feel like they almost feel a little bit unbeatable. I go back to Joel Klatt. I know somebody said it in the corner or in the comments here. Joel Klatt's got a boner for Michigan. Maybe. Who doesn't at this point? But the boa constrictor example or analogy, I think, is just perfect, because that's what it is. It's, the way he said it, it's slow death. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. Like, That's what I love about this Michigan team. There's not anything in particular, one thing that stands out. It's just all solid. It's all good. It's all consistent across the board everywhere you look.
Michigan comes on, Klatt's like, oh, swim from 6 to midnight. He's got to be careful out there, dude. He's got to be
He was
careful.
on my shit list for a minute, and now he's right back in. Right back.
All right, here is our super comment here. Thank you, Chris Fields, for the generous donation. We love that. PJ Fleck, yeah, his comments are really making the rounds, and I was asked about this on Jamie's radio show today. Like, did PJ Fleck really mean that, or is he just? Well, and I said, first of all, in case you didn't hear the comment, PJ Fleck said that is the best team that he has ever faced. And yeah, he has coached the New Year's Six Bowls. He's faced some really good teams throughout the course of his career. The way that Michigan is winning is pretty crazy. Is the level of play sustainable if they drop off at some point? Is there a panic? Pretty loaded question there, Chris. But first, I think PJ Fleck kind of had to say it because he did just get his ass kicked by 42 points at home, and Michigan again barely even broke a sweat. JJ didn't play in the fourth quarter, etc. But it's everything Chris just said. Like, they feel unbeatable. They're not beating themselves. They're talented. They're versatile. They're deep. They've got speed. They've got size. Like, there's no weakness on this team. And because of that, I do think it's sustainable. I think you're not going to play a perfect all the way across the board season, but I think you're going to get what you're getting right now far more than anything else. And if it does dip, that's going to be like a short-lived blip in what they're doing. It just feels that way.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think if you think PJ Fleck was sort of sugarcoating, the loss and trying to make it seem, I mean, point out the lie. What and anything he said, where's the lie? I didn't see one. And yeah, Chris, I think that this level of play is probably the most sustainable of anything I've seen around the country. And it goes back to what I just said. It's the level of consistency. It's the fact that JJ doesn't have to go out and be a Heisman front runner. He can have a modest afternoon. Blake Corm doesn't have to put the entire team on his back and rush for 150 a game. You're not seeing a wide receiver have to go out and be a superstar. It's mostly generated by how stifling the defense is, that the offense can afford to be just slow and methodical in its approach. And so I just, when you look at the Michigan defense across the board, pretty much every guy on that roster who's starting is a captain, in my view. Guys like Rod Moore, Will Johnson, Mike Sainer still obviously a captain. The guys you have at the edge, the guys you have up front, Chris Jenkins. I mean, they are loaded top to bottom. I think it's certainly sustainable, and I think it's one of the reasons why Michigan's going to be playing for a national championship this year. I just don't see anybody that beats them in the Big Ten. It's certainly not going to happen in the Big Ten championship game, and I don't see any scenario in the world where Michigan goes to another college football playoff and loses in the semifinal.
I know.
I mean, they've done it 2 years in a row now. They need to take a step forward. I think that they will play for a national championship, and if they can sustain this level of play, to your point, Chris, yeah, I think this can win a national championship, and that's something that I would not have said a year ago at this time. I would have been pounding that you got to throw it more with JJ. What's going to happen later in the year when you got to sling it? And, these receivers need reps and on and on and on and all that bullshit. And none of it really matters. None of it matters.
Yeah. For all the reasons, the things that they're good at seem to travel well. It's just a disciplined team, smart team, veteran team. I don't know. Those things don't dry up or drop off, to use your wording, Chris. I just don't think it's going to happen. Not with this group. Adam, this is a really good question. Give us a second to kind of think it through, because I feel like there's a couple different ones. But biggest surprise, good or bad, team or individual, through the midway point of the season. So yeah, 6 games in. What's the biggest thing we said one earlier. I'll say it again. AJ Barner playing as much as he's playing, outplaying Colston Loveland. I mean, it's not really a huge development in the way that the team is playing necessarily, but I would have never guessed that. I mean, if you had put some of these things on a board and, had you do a prediction, I never would have picked that one would happen. So that's been pretty surprising. Chris, you got one off the top of your head?
I mean, it's hands down Donovan Edwards. It's not even close to me. And the numbers, when you look at his rushing numbers and then you compare it to, what he's doing in the passing game. And I think he's like the second or third leading receiver on the team right now. He's got 16 or 18 receptions on the year, so they're obviously trying to get him more involved in that facet. But I mean, Jesus, the fact that he hasn't found the end zone through the first 6 weeks is mind blowing to me. No matter what the yardage looks like or the carries look like, this is a guy that just seems like would be near impossible to keep out of the end zone, especially in non-conference play. And it just hasn't played out that way. So by far for me, the biggest surprise of the year has been the fact that Donovan Edwards has not found the end zone, and we're going into week 7.
I mean, raise your hand if you thought that going into week 7, Donovan Edwards would have less touchdowns than Leon Franklin, Kalel Mullings, Keon Sabb. I mean, like,
I'd say he's injured.
Crazy.
You know, that's
Yeah,
what
yeah.
that would have been the only explanation, is that he's not able to play.
Yeah, that's crazy, and maybe not completely related to that point, but the emergence of Kalel Mullings, I think, is pretty surprising. I mean, you know, we talked about that before too.
Yep.
Oh, he's a full-time running back now. Okay, yeah, we'll see him once in a blue moon here when they needed a tough yard or when they want to get cute by the goal line. But no, that is not what he is, and that's not how he's being used at this point. And he's been more productive than Donovan Edwards. So yeah, it's. Like I said, I don't know if those things are technically like, you know, one is the result of the other. I think it's just been, you know, Mullings has done the most with his opportunity because he hasn't carried it that many times.
No.
But he's done a really
I think
good job.
He's got less than 25 carries on the year so far. So, you know, I mean, if you're looking for a good surprise, I would say, you know, Kalel Mullings, view him as a short yardage back. That's kind of how he's been billed. But when you look at the way that he's played, what he did against Nebraska, I mean, a 20+ yard touchdown run, and he looks a little shifty when he gets the ball. So a guy like that, I mean, I think he's earned the right to carry the ball more on Saturdays, and I think we're probably going to see that as the season goes on. For as much as I love Donovan Edwards, Kalel Mullings is certainly earning his piece of the pie and should see his carries go up. There's no doubt.
Yeah, there is no doubt. Let's see. Another good question here. Obviously, it's been making the rounds a little bit. John Bacon kind of breaking the news that it seems imminent that Jim Harbaugh will get a new contract. Not sure exactly. What was his? Did he say within the month, or he just said it was in the very near future or
Within
something?
a month.
Yeah, within the month. Okay.
Yeah.
So how much a year will Jim Harbaugh make on his new contract? Well, the report is that it will be for more than anybody else in the Big Ten. He'll be the highest paid coach in the Big Ten. And Ryan Day is currently in that spot with about $10.2 million. So call it 10-4, 10-5, and deserving of every penny because he keeps beating the shit out of that guy in Columbus, and he's got the Wolverines rolling right along. So yeah, I would expect it to be somewhere in that range. Mel Tucker, well, little asterisk by his name at this point, I guess. James Franklin, I guess, would be second technically now at $8.5 million. So yeah, Jim Harbaugh will be north of $10.2 million from everything we've heard, and I don't know, it's deserved.
Just make it 12. Just make it an even 12.
Just crank it up.
Throw money his way. Do everything you can. Because I know we say it's going to happen every year, and it is inevitable, but it's just, I can't imagine it's great for recruiting when every single year, you know, Jim Harbaugh's name is in the conversation for possibly bolting and taking an NFL job. And so it would be nice if Michigan offered him a contract that he's earned and deserved at this point. And both, you know, Jim has said it multiple times. You like to be somewhere where you're wanted. Well, make sure with whatever it is you offer him this time around that he knows damn well he's wanted here in Ann Arbor for the long haul. Put the rest of it to bed and let him do what he does here until he can't coach anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like a pretty easy thing to do. Make him the highest paid coach in the conference. If he's still behind,
make him the highest paid coach in the country.
I was just going to say, if he's still behind Saban and Kirby, yeah, so be it. They, you know, I get it. You know, we're talking about Jim Harbaugh with back-to-back Big Ten titles, where Kirby's talking about back-to-back national titles, and Saban. I think Dabo is still above Harbaugh too, which is a joke at this point, but that's about where he should be, top 3 right now, given how things are going and where the programs are at. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't, you know, if they came out and he's making 13-8 or whatever it is that puts him ahead of Saban, I'd be all right, fine, cool, keep him around. Yeah. Motivation to beat up on those guys and take Michigan all the way to the top.
Pretty good motivation to stay around in Ann Arbor for the long haul.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if we want to spend a ton of time here, but obviously we just kind of poked fun at the situation there, the lone wolf. As a Michigan fan, I'm curious too. I am very curious about who Michigan State's going to hire next. Chris thinks it's going to be. Is that why you're laughing?
I have no idea who it's going to be. But I don't think it's going to be anywhere near what a lot of people out there in the Twitter sphere hope it's going to be. some of these names that I've seen thrown around just seem a little bit ridiculous. And I think it really speaks to how disconnected that fan base is from the reality. Now, what I will say is when you look at the way that the conferences are sort of realigning, a job in the Big Ten with any program is a pretty damn good deal. But you're going to have to deal with Michigan every single year, and it doesn't look like they're going away anytime soon. And it's not like the Michigan State program is in a great place right now. I don't see it being a elite, former head coach who's won multiple national championships type hire. I think it's going to be somebody who's been a coordinator, somebody who's been working their way up the ranks and is going to get an opportunity to coach in East Lansing. That's what I think is more realistic, but slightly curious because it's still a rivalry and Jim Harbaugh is still going to have to coach against whoever it is. And, for as brief as Mel Tucker's stay was, it was interesting. Mark D'Antonio was interesting. So yeah, I'm a little curious who they're going to hire.
Do they just re-up Mark D'Antonio, just revamp that and just roll with it? Or, if I was making that hire, I would look long and hard at what might work against a Michigan, against an Ohio State, against a Penn State, and try to find somebody who aligns with that. I don't know what that answer is. They're not going to be able to recruit as well as those three programs for a while. I like Jason Candle, the head coach at Toledo. I think he's the guy that I've thought has been doing Michigan State fans would hate that hire, but the dude can coach. He's from the Midwest. He knows Ohio. I tell you what, he'd be a better offensive coach out of the gate than both Mark D'Antonio and Mel Tucker immediately. Yeah. He doesn't have the name. Mel Tucker wasn't a big name hire, though. The dude was below 500 when Michigan State went and got him. That's not a guy people were pounding down the doors for. Yes, after the Kenneth Walker season.
You say KY? Where were you going there?
I was going to say KY. I was going to say K9 and K Walker at the same time, and it came out K Walker, whatever. After the Kenneth Walker season, yes, Mel Tucker was a little bit more coveted. We all learned that was fool's gold, but I just don't know if you want to go that route again. It just blew up in your face so badly. You hired a guy for $100 million damn near, and it was the worst move your football program has ever made. Right. So I just don't know. To me, if you're that program, if you're that athletic department, you just don't want to go to that well again. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see him going after another name where they're like, well, that sucked. I know they kept the money. It's just about the optics.
Yeah.
They have the money, but I don't know if they want to do that again. Go with the guy who's clawing and scratching and trying to make it. I
think that's probably the more realistic thing. This idea that they're going to bring in a high caliber, like I said, somebody who's, won at the highest level in college football. I just don't see it. They're not going to lure anybody away from a top tier program. And I don't think that job is enough to bring anybody out of retirement, especially somebody like an Urban Meyer. And that name that I've seen his name thrown around, they are begging. They are flat out begging for Urban Meyer. They are desperate. They are hoping they can do anything they can do, at least on social media, to bring this guy out of the Fox booth. But
I'm going to tell you right now. I'm going to tell you right now, coaching at Michigan State is not coaching at Ohio State. He's not going to be that Urban Meyer, dude. It's look, if they get him, it's the best thing they could do. But there's no question. But it's not the same place. Right. It's not the same recruiting base. It's not the same place. It's not the same starting point. It's not the same. So
you have to live in East Lansing.
Yeah, there is that. But no, it's not. That's not going to happen. Gentle Comedian, love that name, by the way. Not sure we've seen you here before, so thanks for joining us. But can Indiana throw? Well, that's debatable. They're 77th in the country. They throw for 224 yards a game. That's not a lot, but this is the number that I think means they blow at throwing the ball. You ready for this, Chris?
Let's hear it.
They have thrown 4 touchdown passes, 4 against 3 picks. So
yeah.
Not real worried about that air attack. That's why I almost don't. I'm like, is that correct? Is that really the touchdown column? Yeah, 4 touchdown passes for Indiana.
Yeah, so, even if
5 games.
Clearly they can't. But even if they could, I don't think the weather on Saturday is going to allow for that style of play. I think it's going to be windy. It's going to be rainy and wet. And, it's going to be a battle in the trenches for 3 hours. And I think that everything about what this game is going to be on Saturday just favors Michigan. So yeah, I don't think we're going to see much through the air from the Hoosiers on Saturday.
Boner? Is Boner one of them?
Boner.
Remember that line from, was it Friday Night Lights? They're doing like the sex ed class and they're like taking different names for it. And one kid's like, Boner? Is Boner one of them? Remember that? I think that was Friday Night Lights.
I know.
The teacher that ended up being a stripper. Come on, man. That's classic stuff right there. All right. Anyway, looking for some more questions here. I don't know if I know the answer to that one, so I don't want to put it up there. I don't want to look stupid on my own show. All right. Well, okay. Chris just kind of highlighted.
Come on now, Brandon. We're beyond that.
That's fair. That's fair. I was 17 minutes late for the show while I was dropping.
Well past that.
Here. All right. I think you said it last week during Burning Questions. Your scale was at 0. Well, was that for Indiana? That might have been.
I don't think it was for Indiana. No.
Same thing, right? I mean, it's still a 0. We just pointed out that they can't throw. Chris, I think you said that their rushing offense was even worse. Did you not?
It's worse. Yeah, 115th or something like that in the nation. So
let me peep that real quick.
Not great.
115th in the nation is correct, Chris. They have rushed for just 7 touchdowns, which is 3 less than Blake Corm has by himself. They do run it about 34 times a game, but only to the tune of 110 yards. So they're averaging like just over 3 yards. Not good. They're just not a good offensive football team.
No, and they haven't seen anywhere close to the defense they're going to see on Saturday. So, yeah, I mean, it might be, you might get Michigan's first shutout of the year on Saturday. I think that's the kind of game that we're probably looking at.
How do you feel about that spread then? 33.5?
Very comfortable with it.
Wow.
Very comfortable with it. Yeah.
That's a big boy number right there. But yeah, I mean, the way Michigan's played Indiana's worse than Nebraska and Minnesota. I think everybody
would agree
with that. Yeah.
There's no doubt.
That could be an ugly one. All right, let's keep it moving here. That's an interesting question. I kind of like that, Connor S. If we could pick any team for Michigan to face in the college football playoff semifinal and final, who would it be? That's interesting. I like that. Michigan want a shot at the biggest dog on the block, right? Got to throw Georgia in there.
I was going to say, I like the idea of facing either an Oklahoma or a USC in the semifinal type matchup, or a Texas in the semifinal. I'd like to see Michigan go up against a team that has looked somewhat explosive, just to see.
Texas probably out. I mean,
Texas probably out, out. But
a team like that,
a one-loss team can certainly get in. We've seen it, right? I mean, we saw it last year. We've seen it multiple years. But a team like that, like a Texas and Oklahoma, a USC, and then of course in the national championship game, to me, nothing would be better than Michigan meeting Georgia, knocking off the 2-time champs there, and avenging that loss from 2021. And I just think it would be something about that would be poetic. And my hope was that they would play Iowa in the Big Ten championship game, but that doesn't look like it's going to happen. Is Kate out for the year? Is that confirmed?
I believe he's out for the year. Yeah.
Yeah. So that storyline sort of fading away.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's only a few choices out there that, if you're talking realistically, like who could make it, who
Washington.
Yeah. Washington would be cool. Oregon would certainly be cool.
A future Big Ten opponent, seeing it play out for the first time in the playoff.
I mean, we did almost see a Michigan-Ohio State matchup. We thought that was going to be possible.
Yeah, fuck that. That was a 1-year deal. I'm over that. I don't want to see that anymore.
You were all about it last year.
I wanted it. I wanted that more than anything last year. But to me, now the novelty's gone. It's past. Ohio State's old news at this point.
Okay, fair enough.
Beat their ass again in November, and then let's move on. Let's play a real team like Washington or Oregon. Give me somebody real out there.
This is a great question, and I have never thought about it from this angle because it's just not really what we do given our job. But Michigan's biggest opponent right now is themselves. We've talked about the taking care of the football, the no penalties. They just get it done at a very efficient clip, staying focused, not getting complacent. Yeah, not getting the big head. Jim Harbaugh has talked about that. So if you were a coach, Chris, and we were getting ready to take on Michigan, how do you beat those guys, dude? That's a freaking good question.
That is a really good question. It's a really good question. Yeah, because you constantly think about it from the perspective
other way.
of Michigan and what they're going to do.
Yeah.
You know, like let's say you were on Indiana side and you were going into it this weekend and you're trying to figure out what can you do to win this game. I don't know. I don't know. Have a different roster? I'm not sure.
Well, yeah,
I'm not sure what you do, to beat this team because they're good in every facet. There is not, if there is a weakness on this team, they haven't shown it yet. Let's put it that way. So I don't know where to point to say, oh, attack that, do that. Because I don't know. Where's the weakness, Brandon? Where's it at?
There isn't. It's funny, man. We just talked about this today on the radio when I was on with Jamie and those guys. Like, if you ranked all 11 of Michigan starters, certainly you'd end up having a guy at number 11. And I'm like, think of how good that guy is. Like the worst player on their defense is like really freaking good.
Really good.
And we had this question too, which on the defense, which level is the best level? Front, middle, or back? And it's such a hard question to answer. Yeah. It's a really hard question to answer. So yeah, I'm trying, as I was reading through the question, I'm trying to think, okay, like do you want to hit him with a lot of misdirection stuff? Do you want to do a bunch of crossing? I mean, you know what crossing routes used to do to a Michigan team? Well, that shit don't work anymore. They've got enough speed. You can't just throw it deep all game. Okay, let's try a bunch of trick plays, gimmick stuff. Nah, they're too disciplined for that. That shit's getting blown up in the backfield. I don't know where you go. I don't know what you do. They're too physical and big and strong up front to try a lot of misdirections or traps, or you try to ear hole guys and just get them out of the way.
Right.
I don't think any of that stuff is going to work. And then on defense,
I was going to say, where do you attack defensively? What are you going to do?
And then if you're on defense, well, we've already seen it. Teams have loaded up. All right, 9 in the box. All right, JJ throws for 290 and 3 scores.
And 2 incompletions and plays 3 quarters.
I don't know what you do. Okay, you blitz a whole bunch. Well, then you're going to leave Roman Wilson running free on a 4-yard drag that he turns into a 50-yard score. We saw that too. It's a great question, and I don't have an answer, and that's why Michigan's going to be 10-0, getting ready to take on, or 9-0, getting ready to take on Penn State. That's exactly why.
Are we seeing a little chink in the armor with Penn State? Is a little bit of the shine is off. I feel like, at least from where I was at the beginning of the season, I was looking at that game and I'm like, you know what? I don't think Michigan's going to go perfect, undefeated once again through Big Ten play. If I had to pick a loss, I thought it was going to be at Penn State. I've evolved on that after the first 6 weeks. I think Michigan goes into Happy Valley and handles their business. And, Penn State they look good, but they don't look as good as I thought they were going to look at this point in the year.
Yeah, the bloom is off the rose, as they say, Chris, a little bit with Penn State. I mean, yeah, that's still going to be the most talented team Michigan plays at that point. Like, it's not particularly close. I mean,
right.
Drew Aller is still a big-time quarterback, but I don't know. Yeah, they've struggled with teams that you just they shouldn't have struggled with, and I don't think Michigan would have, and they haven't yet. I mean, you talk about was it Northwestern, right? At Northwestern,
yeah.
Penn State needed every minute of that game to get a win. Michigan, Northwestern's nowhere near as good as Nebraska or Minnesota, and Michigan went into their houses and destroyed them. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, you do have some stinkers every once in a while. Good teams have bad games, but Michigan hasn't been one of those teams yet. That's why I said, they're the only team that's won every game by 24 or more points. And you can say, yeah, they haven't really played a good team yet. I would agree with that. But other good teams have struggled with bad teams. It's happened already, and it hasn't happened for Michigan. So I think it's worth mentioning that. Our other guy, our other new Andrew Anthony discussion type players. Yeah, Alex Orji's still hurt. He didn't travel last week.
Last 2 weeks.
Last 2 weeks, maybe, yeah, for the away games. And then I believe, Chris, right, he was in street clothes for the Rutgers game.
Yes. Yep.
And so, yeah, he's clearly dealing with something, and not even on the travel roster for the first 2 away games of the year. So yeah, we'll see what Let looks like, and we'll see if he's back in the uniform on Saturday. Yeah, Orgy got hurt. I don't know how or when, but apparently he did get hurt and hasn't been a go.
Certainly wasn't the result of anything he did in a game.
No, I don't believe so. I don't believe so. Nah, I'm going to put this up. I mean, we've talked about it quite a bit. No, I don't think there's anything about saving Donovan Edwards for the end of the year. They're giving him chances. I mean, he's not carrying it a ton, but neither is Blake Corm. I was looking this up today. He's leading the country with 10 rushing touchdowns. He's got like half the carries of the other dudes in the top 10.
Yeah.
Like he's not being used that much. And that's, he doesn't have a lot of the long runs, but he's still getting in the end zone.
It's the same across the board. Let me ask you, let's do a little fun thing right here. Like you've watched Price is Right.
I have.
Correct? You've seen it before. So I'm going to ask you where JJ's at in terms of total attempts on the season, where he ranks. And I'm going to do like brackets, and you just tell me when to stop when you think I've gotten to where he's at. All right. So total attempts on the year, is he in the top 10?
In the country?
Yeah.
No.
Top 20?
No.
Top 30?
No.
Top 40?
I would say top 40.
You would be wrong. Top
Wow.
50? No.
Well,
top 60? No. Top 70? No. Top 80? No. Top 90? No.
Wow.
He's number 91 in the country.
No
in total
way.
attempts right now. Number 91. I was blown away by that. And I looked it up when I was trying to figure out what Roman Wilson's numbers were. I'm like, okay, well, if JJ McCarthy was throwing it around a little bit more, he might have a better ranking there. His numbers might be a little bit better. JJ McCarthy, 91 in the country.
I didn't believe it. I had
In
125 throws.
It's
125 throws through 6 games. Wow.
That's what happens when you play 3 quarters and you're super efficient and you've got a great defense that doesn't require you to have to put up a lot of points. And I think that speaks to Blake Corm again, like he's got half the carries as those other guys that are basically in the same conversation touchdown wise, but the reps just aren't there offensively. They don't need to be.
So Blake Corm has 10 touchdowns. He's the only one with 10. There's a couple guys with 9, a bunch with 8, 7, so forth. So Blake Corm has carried it 83 times. And the next closest guy, Jordan Waters from Duke, has carried it 52 times and has 8 touchdowns. He's down at number 10. Everybody else is well over 100. Dude from Boise State's at 120. A couple guys in the 90s. So, Blake Corm is carrying it less than the other backs who are producing as much as he is. Now, his yardage is down a little bit from last year, but not a lot, right? I mean, you've crunched that number a few times.
Right.
Blake is currently 28th in the country with 494 yards. I mean, that's not like an eye-popping number, but it's not like he's not getting it done. And because he's carried it quite a bit less than everybody else, his yards per carry is actually pretty solid. Some of these guys don't have that many carries, but he's averaging almost 6 yards a carry. So anyway, point being, the usage is in terms of attempts isn't really there, but does it matter? I mean, the production's there. Roman Wilson still second in the country, I believe, with 8 touchdown catches.
With a quarterback that ranks 91st in attempts. It's crazy to me. This offense, I don't want it to sound bad, but it has so much more potential than what we've seen. It's just not needed. Like, imagine if JJ was required to throw the ball, 30 times a game and play a full 4 quarters. Like some of these other guys, some of these other quarterbacks that you see leading the Heisman race, I mean, they're playing 4 quarters. They're throwing the ball around the field. JJ's just not doing that. Completion percentage is way up there. Obviously when you watch him with your eyes, the footwork, the vision downfield, the dual threat ability where he can get out and hurt a defense, like all of that stuff, everything looks like a Heisman Trophy caliber quarterback. But when you've had, you're 91st in the country in attempts, I don't see how you get to New York that way.
I got so annoyed earlier today because Jim Harbaugh said he had a chance to watch Caleb Williams, and he said, that's the 2 best right there, J.J. McCarthy, Caleb Williams. Who's the dude that's on the radio show in the morning with Jansen? Is it Stoney?
Might be.
I think it's Stoney and Jansen, right? It's the guy opposite Jansen. I was listening to the radio on the this morning for a minute, and he said something, or maybe it was yesterday, whenever it was. He said, Yeah, Jim Harbaugh said this, and they played the quote, and Jim Harbaugh said, you know, JJ McCarthy, Caleb Williams, that's the best 2 quarterbacks in the country right there. I think it's really close, and blah, 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 blah. And then they come back, and they, you know, Stoney's like, JJ McCarthy is not Caleb Williams. I mean, he was like screaming it, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. JJ's teams don't go to overtime with freaking Arizona, dude. What are you doing? Like, to say that they're so different, I think is just, that's lazy. Because it's very clear that they're being asked to do different things.
You had it pulled up, right? Where's Caleb Williams at in the country in attempts? How many times has he thrown the ball? Where does he rank there?
Let me go.
I'd like to see that comparison, because we talked about that on Monday's show. If you take JJ McCarthy and you put him in USC's offense, how different would his numbers look? I think he would thrive. I think you would see Caleb Williams like numbers.
So Caleb Williams he's down at 45. He's only thrown it 166 times. So it's not, that's 40 more times than JJ.
Yeah.
You know, which is significant when you've only played 5 or 6 games.
Sure.
But like Shedeur Sanders, you mentioned him earlier, right? As you know,
right.
Colorado throwing it around the number. He's thrown it 256 times, 3rd in the country.
Yeah.
He's completed 60 more passes than JJ's even thrown. You know, I mean, like, they're just being asked to do different things.
What about Penix? Where's he at on that? He's got to be up there.
They do throw it a lot, but they've also blown some teams out. Quinn Ewers is at. Let me just throw a few of the bigger names out here.
Yeah.
Hudson Card for Purdue. I just know the name. He's number 10, 214 throws. Talia Tagovailoa, number 11, 210 throws. Cade Klubnik for Clemson, 210 throws. JT Daniels on his 14th college team has thrown it 206 times. Carson Beck for Georgia is at 19. He's thrown it 196 times. Dylan Gabriel for Oklahoma, 195. Luke Altmaier at Illinois, which, like, I don't even think of them as they don't throw it. He's thrown it 190 times. Quinn Ewers, I just mentioned. Sam Hartman at Notre Dame, 183 times. He's down at number 29. Drake May, the other quarterback that often gets put ahead of JJ for North Carolina. He's only played 5 games, and he's thrown it 178 times. That's 33rd in the country. And there's Michael Penix right there, 34th in the country, also only played 5 games, 178 attempts. So I know there's a lot of numbers being thrown out there, but point being, different. It's like apples and oranges. It really is.
I guess that's my point. When you have a guy that just flat out, you know, can't see the correlation or how JJ McCarthy can be compared to a Caleb Williams. He's not being asked to do half of what these other quarterbacks are being asked to do. Again, ranks 91 in the country in attempts, and he spends almost the entirety of the 4th quarter watching from the sideline for all 6 weeks. And so, you know, and he said it after the game against Minnesota that, you know, and that I think is one of the things that makes this team so special is that you hear a lot of players talk about it, you know, they're about the team and we just want to see our teammates succeed. And yet you really believe it when you hear these guys talk about it. And when JJ McCarthy says flat out, like, we're not thinking about personal accolades. We're not thinking about the NFL. Like, we're thinking about right here and right now and how we can win as a team. And I think, you know, guys like Joel Klatt, I think on Monday on his show, on his podcast, he said something to the effect of, JJ McCarthy is the most perfect quarterback for the Michigan football program that you could have, because he truly is selfless. He isn't a guy that needs to go out and throw it 40 times. He's not a high ego type guy. They just have all the right pieces in place. But I have 0 doubts that if you plug JJ McCarthy into USC, or you take him out to Washington, or you put him in Colorado and you ask him to throw it 40 or 50 times, he's going to fucking light it up. You're going to see a kid that can throw it 300-400 yards a game.
You know what one fan base is going to love hearing and one's going to hate hearing? Put JJ McCarthy in Columbus and watch Marvin Harrison Jr.'s production go up.
Correct.
Yeah. How about that, Ohio State? Would you tell me right now they wouldn't trade every quarterback on their roster for number 9?
They won't say it openly. They won't say it.
Oh, they know it. They're dreaming about it. I can dream about you. Sorry. It just popped into my head. It just popped into my head right there.
Whoo, where's
Moving sidewalk. I couldn't even remember his name. Kyle McCord. They would trade Kyle McCord, Ryan Day, and Brian Hartline for JJ McCarthy right now. Straight up.
Hard to argue.
Does the Indiana Dad? My dad even thinks under 10 miles an hour. How dare you, Dad?
Look, if anyone he knows.
No, he don't. He don't know. He don't
Your
know shit.
father knows, Brandon.
No. Okay, let me just say this. This is the same man who thinks he would win the UFC because I just wouldn't tap. And he
He's got
does
the dad
this.
strength.
He just wades. My dad has no neck. First of all, listen.
You see how defensive you're getting by the under on 10? That makes me feel like he's onto something here.
No. Scott Brown lays flat on his back on the Chris, listen to what I'm saying. Listen. When Scott Brown lays flat on his back on the ground, his head does not touch the ground.
Okay.
Neck is gone.
Okay.
Dude's not winning anything in the UFC. Couldn't no.
Well, look, if you don't got a neck, they can't choke you out.
He doesn't. Oh, it'd be hideous. We'd be planning a funeral. My poor father would be done.
This is all smoke and mirrors to me. Okay, this was about what the top speed would be, and your father would be under on 10.
He's clearly lost it when it comes to athletic evaluation. Is my point.
Okay.
He's lost it. Yeah, I didn't even see that comment. Now it was like
my week is coming up soon, and I do know of a radar on the side of the street that is local to where you're not going to woods.
I gotta find one of those treadmills that tracks it.
No, you just there. It's right on the side of the road. You just get out of the car and you run, and it will radar you right then and there.
I don't think that's accurate. I want to know what's really happening.
It's deadly accurate.
Deadly accurate. There's no way you know that. There's no way.
I know a thing or two about radar.
My goodness. Oh, that's funny. It's funny because I don't see these comments until like 20 minutes after they happen because I'm trying to get all the
That's
old
what
ones.
I'm saying. See, no assistance from some a device, no treadmill assistance. You get out.
No, that's how they measured in sports.
Mother Nature. You put your feet onto the earth and you run, and we see how fast you can go. Otherwise, to me, it's
it's not. Who said that? It's not an assistance. Who said that?
It is an assistance.
CJ, of course it was CJ.
That's why I don't. That's why I'm not buying the treadmill idea. To me, stinks.
You set the treadmill at a speed and you see if you can go. How is that an assistance?
The treadmill idea stinks.
That's what I'm doing.
Well,
my uncle Mike suggests we get my uncle Chuck, who's a cop, involved with the radar gun. We could probably do that.
Something where you're actually running across the earth. And radar can detect you. That's what we need.
All right. I understand. When you put it that way, I understand the allure. I understand.
It's the only way we'll know for sure.
Uncle Chuck really has a calibrated radar. Well, there we go.
That's it right there.
All right. I'm going to do it by myself.
Allow me to film it, get it in high def.
I'm going to do it by myself in private ahead of time just so I know what's going on.
No.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah.
No, this is something you were so confident you could. What was it? You thought you were going to hit 16, 17 mile an hour?
I said 15.
Right out the gate?
I said 15.
Yeah, there's no need to practice warm up for anything. This is just hit it.
I want to see what 15 miles an hour looks like, and then I'll feel pretty good about it. But I feel how
You're
I
already
feel.
backtracking.
No, I'm hitting it. I'm hitting it for sure. All right, I'm about ready to pack it in. I'm up to the current questions. We're off the rails a little bit. Half of my family's in here. None of them know what they're talking about.
Brandon's feeling attacked. He's going to shut it down.
I'm ready to
shut
her down.
The show down.
I need some diesel. I need I don't know. I've had enough for the night. I legitimately. Okay, we're going to do this. Very, very, very possible I don't hit 15. Very possible. Okay. But if I do,
really possible.
Then what? It's not like all these people are going to praise me. This is how shit works in sports. It's all this trash talking.
You'll have the satisfaction of having proven everybody wrong. Like that's all you need is the personal satisfaction of knowing that you did what you said you could do. But if it goes the way I think it's going to go, Brandon, I think it's going to make for some good video.
I need to put this out there. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was getting my son in and out of my car. I got a little bit of a hamstring.
Got a little injury. You see what's happening? He's laying the groundwork already to run a sub 10-mile-an-hour speed.
Chris, if you want to feel this thing the next time we're together,
I don't.
there's a rock in there, dude, in the hamstring region. It's not healthy. Right hammy, 75% probably right now. I'll stretch it out and I'll get it. I'm gonna do it for the people, but I'm not at 100%. Hey, look at us.
Laying the groundwork.
Well,
I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it in 4K. I'm gonna slow it down, super slow mo, so we see every stride.
that's gonna be bad. That's gonna be bad. There's so much more upper body than lower body with me.
The
It's
pain and determination in your eyes. I'll make sure I get in real close on that. And then
there's
we'll pan over to the radar.
so much more upper body than lower body when it comes to me, dude. It's gonna look bad in slow motion. Bad.
They see what you're doing. They see what you're doing here.
I promise I'm not going to spend a lot of time on my torso here. It's a thing.
Dude, you're backpedaling about 15 mile an hour right now. I'll give you that.
That's the thing. Hey, I'm not going to back down from it.
Just spend the next couple weeks preparing.
Yeah, I'm ready, dude. Well, we got an hour in. Comments and questions were pretty solid. Appreciate the donations that we got. Always appreciate that. I'm not a faller.
Vince S wins the comment section tonight. Thank you for that one, Vince. Phenomenal contribution to
the track. That's not that great. It's as someone who's also written many parodies in my day, it's a little off, Vince. It's not the right amount of syllables, but I get what you're doing.
It was perfect.
It's fine. Dude, if Nickelback's playing, 17. I'm kidding. 15 is the mark. Brandon goes for 15. That's what it's going to be called.
Yep.
All right. I've had enough for the night. My dad's putting the under at 10. My uncles are volunteering to watch me fail.
Ending the show as a broken man. People just coming out of the woodwork to lend us radar to make this happen.
Oh, shit. All right. Yeah, the plan right now is to certainly have a show on Friday. Darren says maybe. See you Friday, maybe.
The reputation we have here?
Well, hey.
In shambles.
All right. Well, we will see you on Friday at 7 o'clock for the pregame show. Take care.